The rain fell softly on the alien soil, each drop tapping against the silver pendant in Daniel's hand. He stood at her grave, the strange markings on the stone glowing faintly in the dusk. "Goodbye, Lyra." His voice trembled. "I wish I could have saved you." The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a scent that felt familiar. He placed the pendant on the grave and turned to leave. Then a warm hand touched his shoulder. Daniel froze. His heart pounded. Slowly, he turned, and there she was, breathing, alive. "We don't have much time." "Daniel," she whispered. "They know I'm here." The rain fell gently on the quiet hill, drops sliding down the dark stone that marked her resting place. Daniel stood still, his coat heavy with water, but he didn't move. The alien sky above was a deep shade of purple, with 2 moons hiding behind drifting clouds. Around him, the tall trees swayed slowly, their silver leaves rustling in the wind. He had been there for hours. He didn't know why he couldn't leave. Maybe because this was the last place where she had been close to him. The grave had strange symbols carved into it, not human letters, but the flowing script of her people. He could not read them, but he knew what they meant. In his hand, he held a small silver pendant. It was shaped like a star, with a blue crystal in the center. He had carried it for weeks, waiting for the right time to leave it here. It had been meant as a gift for her, but he never had the chance to give it. His voice was soft, almost lost in the wind. "Goodbye, Lyra," he whispered. "I wish I could have saved you. I wish we had more time." The wind seemed to carry his words away, weaving them into the quiet forest. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. For a moment, he thought he could smell her again, that faint, sweet scent she always carried, like a mix of rain and sunlight. It was impossible, but it felt so real that his chest ached. He crouched down and placed the pendant on the grave. The blue crystal caught the faint light of the sky and glowed softly. He let his fingers rest there for a moment, as if touching the cold stone would somehow let her feel it too. Finally, he stood and turned to leave. His boots pressed into the wet earth, and the sound of the forest filled his ears, the distant call of a nightbird. The gentle swish of leaves. Then it happened. A warm hand touched his shoulder. Daniel stopped breathing. His body froze. For a long moment, he didn't move at all, afraid that if he turned around, the feeling would vanish like a dream. The touch was gentle, familiar, and real. His heartbeat quickened, echoing in his ears. Slowly, with shaking hands, he turned his head. She was standing there. Lyra. Her deep, shining eyes looked into his, and the soft glow from the moons lit her silver hair. She was breathing, her chest rising and falling gently. The same faint scent surrounded her, wrapping him in memories. She looked exactly as he remembered, and yet, something about her was different, though he couldn't tell what. Daniel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. He had buried her. He had stood here in this same place and said goodbye. Lyra's lips curved into a small, tired smile. "We don't have much time, Daniel," she said softly, her voice almost carried away by the breeze. "They know I'm here." He blinked, struggling to understand. "Lyra, you're alive?" She gave a small nod. "I'll explain. But not now. We have to move." Daniel felt like the world around him had shifted, like the ground under his feet was no longer solid. 100 questions filled his mind. Where had she been? Why had she disappeared? How could she be here now? But before he could speak again, a faint light flickered in the distance. Deep in the forest, it wasn't the light of the moons. It was sharper, colder, and it moved. Lyra glanced toward it, her expression tightening. "They found me," she whispered. Daniel turned to look at her, still unable to believe what he was seeing. He wanted to ask who they were, what she meant, but something in her voice told him this wasn't the time. She reached for his hand, her fingers warm against his cold skin. "Please, Daniel, trust me, we have to go now." The strange light grew brighter, weaving through the trees, and Daniel felt the quiet hill no longer felt safe. Without fully understanding why, he nodded and let her guide him toward the edge of the forest. As they moved away from the grave, Daniel glanced back. The silver pendant lay on the stone, glowing faintly in the moonlight. It was a goodbye he thought he had already spoken, but now, it felt like the beginning of something else entirely. And as the forest closed around them, and the light behind them kept coming closer, he realized one thing, whatever had brought her back was not something ordinary. Daniel's heart was still racing as they moved deeper into the forest. The air felt cooler here, the tall trees closing above them like a roof. Strange blue fireflies drifted in the dark, blinking softly, and the ground gave off a faint silver glow under their feet. He could hear the distant sound of water, maybe a stream, but it was hard to focus on anything except the woman holding his hand. Every step made him more certain she was real. Her fingers were warm, her steps light but urgent. He wanted to speak, but his mind was tangled with disbelief. "You were gone," he finally said, his voice breaking the quiet. I saw you. I stayed by your side until—" He stopped. Unable to finish, Lyra didn't look at him, her gaze fixed ahead. "I know what you saw. It was meant for you to see it that way." Her words confused him even more. "Meant for me?" "Yes," she said softly, her voice calm but heavy. "I didn't want it, but they made it happen." Daniel's steps slowed. "Lyra, who are they?" She finally glanced at him. Her eyes, deep and bright, held something he had never seen before, a kind of distance, as if part of her was still far away. "A group that hides in the spaces between worlds. You've never heard of them, but they've been close all your life." The thought sent a chill through him. "Why would they take you?" Her voice lowered even more, almost to a whisper. "Because of what I am, and because of you." Daniel stopped walking. Lyra took a slow breath, as if choosing her next words carefully. "I'll explain when we're safe. If I tell you now, they might find us faster." That made no sense to him, but before he could question it further, the soft glow of the forest was disturbed by a distant shimmer. It was not the same light they had seen near the grave. This one was softer, like a small doorway of air rippling in the distance. Lyra noticed it too and pulled him toward the right, away from it. They walked for a long while in silence, their footsteps muffled by the thick moss. The forest grew stranger. Giant flowers opened in the dark, releasing scents that reminded him of faraway summers, and delicate threads of light stretched between branches, as if the air itself was weaving them. Finally, the trees began to thin. In the open space ahead stood a small structure, half covered in vines and glowing faintly with alien markings. Daniel had seen such buildings before, old outposts from long-forgotten settlers. Lyra stopped just before the entrance, her eyes scanning the area. "We can rest here for a short while," she said. Daniel stepped inside first. The air was warmer, and a faint hum came from the walls. It felt abandoned, yet not empty. Lyra followed him in and sat on a low bench near the wall. She seemed tired now, as if the weight of her return had finally caught up to her. Daniel sat across from her. "You can't expect me to wait much longer," he said gently. "I need to know how you're alive." She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "What you buried was not me. It was something they created, a shell, something to make you believe I was gone." Daniel's hands tightened on his knees. "Why would they do that?" "To protect something they were trying to hide. Something in me." She paused, her eyes flickering toward the entrance. "But I escaped, and the moment I left, I knew I had to find you." He didn't know what to say. The rain outside had stopped, but the sound of the forest remained, a soft rustle of leaves, a faint distant call. Lyra leaned closer. "Daniel, you're the only one I can trust now." He searched her face for answers, but before he could respond, a faint, deliberate sound came from outside, like footsteps on wet ground. Both of them turned toward the doorway. The forest beyond was still, but Daniel had the strange feeling that something was watching them. Daniel kept his gaze on the doorway, his breath slowing as he tried to listen past the hum of the walls. The sound had been faint, but it carried a weight that told him it wasn't just the forest shifting. Lyra didn't move, though her eyes were fixed on the shadows outside. The air inside the outpost seemed warmer now, as if the walls were holding their breath. A small light blinked on the far wall, pulsing in a steady rhythm. Daniel didn't know if it had been there before. Lyra noticed too, but she didn't comment. Without a word, She stood and moved silently to one of the side passages. Daniel followed. His footsteps muffled on the soft floor. The narrow hallway led to a back exit, a low archway covered with strands of thin silver vines. Lyra brushed them aside and stepped into the night air again. Outside, the forest felt different. It wasn't just quiet, it was expectant, as if every leaf was leaning closer to listen. Daniel walked close behind her, trying to keep his questions inside, but one finally slipped out. "Where are we going?" "To a place they can't follow us easily," she said without looking back. Her words made him uneasy. "Why can't they follow?" Lyra slowed, glanced at him, and then simply said, "Because it's not part of this world." Before he could ask what she meant, the ground ahead began to slope downward. They were entering a narrow path between two high rock walls. The rocks shimmered faintly in the moonlight, their surfaces covered in tiny glowing dots like a map of stars. Daniel touched one of the walls lightly as he passed. The dots shifted under his fingers, rearranging into new patterns before slowly fading back. Lyra noticed his fascination, but kept walking. The path led them to a wide, open space surrounded by the same star-marked rocks. In the center stood something Daniel had never seen before, a tall, smooth structure shaped like a curved blade, its surface glass-like but filled with slow-moving light. "This is the only safe place near here," Lyra said softly. "They can't cross this space without being seen." Daniel stepped closer to the structure, the light inside reflecting faintly in his eyes. "What is it?" "A door," Lyra replied, "but not one that opens for just anyone." He turned to her. "And it opens for you." Her gaze met his, and for a moment she didn't answer. Then she said, "It opens for us." Daniel's mind spun. Every step with her tonight had been filled with more questions, yet she gave only fragments of answers. He wanted to press her, but the forest seemed to stir again. A soft ripple of movement in the shadows behind them. Lyra's expression changed, her calm breaking for just a moment. She moved closer to the tall structure, placing her hand on its smooth surface. The light inside responded instantly, swirling faster, casting soft waves of color across the rocks. Daniel felt the ground beneath him vibrate slightly. The air grew cooler, and a faint hum filled the open space. "They're close," she murmured, glancing toward the path they had taken. Daniel followed her gaze but saw nothing, only darkness, and the slow sway of the trees. Still, his chest felt tight, as if the night itself had drawn in closer. Lyra stepped back from the structure, her hand slipping into his. "Once we step through, things will be different," she said. "You have to trust me." Daniel's eyes searched hers, trying to find even the smallest hint of what she truly meant. But before he could speak, a faint shimmer appeared at the far edge of the open space, like a ripple in water without any source. He didn't know who or what it was. All he knew was that Lyra's grip on his hand tightened, and the swirling light within the tall structure began to spread outward, as if inviting them inside. Daniel hesitated at the glowing surface. The light from the tall structure washed over his face, soft and shifting, as if the colors were alive and aware of him. Lyra's hand stayed firmly in his, her gaze fixed not on him, but on the shimmer at the far edge of the clearing. "They can't touch this place," she said quietly, "but they can still see us if we wait too long." The words sent a chill through him. "Then we go through?" Lyra nodded, but before stepping forward, she looked at him with a strange seriousness. "Once we cross, you'll see what I've been hiding. You may not look at me the same way again." He frowned, confused. "Lyra, I already." She squeezed his hand, stopping him. "Not yet. Just be ready." The glass-like surface rippled as she led him forward. Passing through it felt like stepping into a cool stream, but without getting wet. The light surrounded them, blurring the forest behind until it faded completely. When Daniel could see again, they were standing on a wide, open plain beneath a sky he didn't recognize. It was darker than the one they had left, the stars here, brighter and sharper, ranged in strange constellations he had never seen before. Far in the distance, a faint silver arc stretched across the horizon, glowing softly like a giant ring. "This isn't a different part of the world," Daniel murmured, turning slowly. "It's somewhere else entirely." Yes, Lyra said, her voice low, a place between places. If you know how to reach it. Daniel's eyes landed on a low, rounded building nearby. Its walls smooth and pale, pulsing with a heartbeat-like rhythm. Lyra walked toward it without hesitation, and he followed, his boots sinking slightly into the soft ground inside. The air was warm and filled with a gentle hum. The walls glowed faintly, casting no shadows. In the center stood a circular table, but instead of a solid surface, it held a pool of shifting light. Lyra stopped at the edge of it. This is why they took me, she said, and why they will keep searching. Daniel looked at the pool, unsure. Because of this? No, she said softly, meeting his eyes. Because of me, and because of what's inside me. Her hand hovered above the light, and slowly, the shifting colors began to change, forming images. Daniel saw flashes of her home world, the day they met, and then scenes he didn't recognize. Lyra inside a place filled with tall figures cloaked in shadow. Her expression there was calm, but her eyes were guarded, hiding something. They thought I belonged to them, she said, but I never did. What I carry was not given to me by them. It was inherited. Daniel felt the meaning in her words, even if he couldn't fully understand. Inherited from who? Lyra's gaze did not waver. From my mother. She wasn't one of them. She wasn't even fully from my world. The realization hit him slowly, as if the air had thickened around them. You're saying she was human? Lyra gave a small nod. And so, part of me is too. That's why they feared me, and why they needed to make me disappear. They didn't want anyone to see the connection between our kinds. Daniel stared at her, the questions multiplying in his mind. And me? Where do I fit in this? You're the only one left who can help me unlock what they're trying to keep hidden. Something my mother passed to me. Something I can't reach alone. The light in the pool began to swirl faster, as if sensing their conversation. Outside, beyond the strange building, a faint tremor passed through the ground. Lyra's head turned sharply toward the door. They've found a way to follow, she whispered. Soon. This place won't protect us. Daniel looked from her to the glowing doorway they had come through, his heart beating faster. He didn't know where the next step would lead, only that whatever truth Lyra carried, they were running out of time to uncover it. The low hum of the walls deepened, almost like a quiet warning. Daniel could feel it through the floor, a steady vibration that seemed to grow with each passing second. Lyra moved toward the edge of the room, her eyes scanning the pale walls as though listening for something he could not hear. They're close now, she said softly. Closer than I expected. Daniel stepped nearer to her. Then we have to leave. Not yet, she replied, shaking her head. If we leave without taking what's here, they'll follow us forever. This is our only chance to end it. The words carried a weight that made him still. End it how? Lyra's gaze shifted toward the glowing pool in the center. There's a device here. My mother hid it from them before I was born. It can show the truth they've been hiding, and once it's seen, they can't hide anymore. Daniel looked at the swirling light. You mean proof? Yes, she said. Proof that could change how the galaxy sees them, and us slowly. She reached into the pool. Her fingers didn't sink into water. They moved through light, parting it like mist. When she pulled her hand back, she was holding something small and silver, shaped like a curved leaf, with faint markings running along its surface. Daniel took a step closer. That's it, Lyra nodded. It's more than it looks, but it will only open with two voices, mine and yours. His chest tightened. Why mine? Because you carry the other half of what I am, she said, her voice gentle but sure. You may not feel it, but it's there. My mother left something. In you, too. Daniel shook his head slowly, his mind turning over memories. Moments he couldn't explain. Times when he had known things without learning them. Times when places had felt familiar without reason. And if we open it, her eyes softened. Then the truth will reach everyone, and they will have no power left to hide in the shadows. A faint sound drifted in from outside, not loud, but rhythmic, like the slow pulse of distant steps. Lyra turned toward the doorway, her expression firm. They're almost here. Daniel looked back at the device in her hands. If we do this, can we get out before they come? Yes, she said, but once we start, there's no going back." They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them heavy with choice. Daniel finally nodded. "Tell me what to do." Lyra stepped beside him, placing the device between them. Together, they held it, their hands touching over the smooth silver surface. She closed her eyes, speaking a soft series of words in a language Daniel didn't know. Without thinking, he felt himself answering, words forming in his mouth as if they had always been there, waiting. The markings on the device lit up, brighter and brighter, until the room was awash with silver light. The hum deepened, and the floor beneath them began to tremble. Lyra's voice rose slightly. Almost there, Daniel felt the light press against him, not as heat, but as a deep, knowing presence. And then, in a single breath, the device opened. Not with a click, but with a quiet unfolding, like petals in bloom. Inside was not an object, but an image, a moving scene, clear and alive. It showed towering figures, cloaked in shadow, speaking in grand halls, and then it showed what lay behind those halls, the hidden chains, the silenced voices, the truths they had buried. Daniel's breath caught. "Everyone has to see this." Lyra nodded. "And they will. Once it begins, it can't be stopped." The light from the device spilled out into the air, spreading toward the doorway like a living thing, somewhere beyond the walls. The sound of movement quickened. They knew what was happening, but the truth was already leaving this place, and nothing could pull it back. The silver light poured out of the device, stretching upward until it vanished into the sky. Daniel could feel it moving far beyond this place, racing outward as if it had a destination written into its very glow. Lyra's eyes followed the trail, a mix of relief and urgency flickering across her face. "It's gone," she said softly. "They can't stop it now." Daniel stepped back from the pool of light, his heart still pounding. "Then we should leave before." A sudden shift in the air cut him off. The walls around them shimmered, as though the room itself was being pulled into directions at once. The soft hum they'd heard since arriving now pulsed in sharp waves, each one stronger than the last. "They're trying to seal this place," Lyra said quickly. "If they close it while we're inside, we'll be trapped between." Daniel didn't ask what between meant. The tone in her voice was enough to make him move. They ran to the doorway, but instead of the open plain they'd entered from, they found themselves staring into a shifting curtain of light. "This isn't the way back," Daniel said. "It will be," Lyra replied, scanning the edges. "We just need to find the path they haven't blocked yet." She moved along the wall, fingertips brushing over the smooth surface as if searching for something hidden. Daniel stayed close, glancing nervously at the way the silver light behind them was dimming, as though the device had given all it had to give. Finally, Lyra stopped at a section of wall that seemed no different from the rest. She placed her palm flat against it, closed her eyes, and whispered something under her breath. The wall rippled like water, and a faint outline appeared. An archway just wide enough for the two of them. "This is the last exit," she said, looking at him. "But once we step through, we won't come back here." Daniel gave a small nod. "That's fine. I'm ready." They stepped into the archway together, and the sensation was unlike anything Daniel had felt before, neither warm nor cold, but something that pulled gently at every part of him, as though untying a knot he hadn't known was there. When the pulling stopped, they stood in a quiet clearing beneath a sky that felt more familiar, though the stars still shone brighter. Then he remembered. The forest here was calm, the air still, as if the world had been holding its breath for them. Daniel turned to Lyra. "So, now everyone knows." "Not yet," she said, a faint smile on her lips. "The message is still traveling, but when it reaches them, nothing will be the same." He studied her face, realizing for the first time that she seemed lighter, as if carrying the truth in silence had been a weight she could finally set down. "And what about us?" Lyra's gaze met his. "We keep moving. They may not be able to hide anymore, but that doesn't mean they'll stop trying to control what's left." Daniel took a slow breath, looking out into the trees. The night felt different now, as though the ground itself understood that something had shifted. "Then we stay ahead of them," she nodded, "and we stay together, somewhere far above." A faint streak of silver crossed the sky, the last trace of the light they had released. Daniel watched it fade, knowing that it was carrying their story to places they would never see, to people they would never meet. But here, in this quiet clearing, he knew the journey wasn't over. It had only changed shape, and as they started, walking again, the path ahead felt wider, as if the world was finally making room for the truth they had set free.